Well, good day, everybody, and welcome back. Well, I've been thinking recently about what it means to create with typewriters, and in the context of myself, not only being a dabbling writer with typewriters, but also I have been guilty of encouraging a lot of other people to use typewriters in their workflow. And this has resulted in quite a few people being curious about, Joe, where can I find a good quality typewriter that'll serve me well as a writer? And by the way, I don't want to be a tinkerer. I don't want to fiddle with typewriters. I don't want to buy something that has problems. I really don't want to spend the creative energy learning how to be a tinkerer. I just want to write. Well, that's a very good question. And there's more people like that are becoming interested in typewriters. They don't want to be tinkerers. They just want a reliable, creative writing machine. Let's talk about that. I think those of us who have been typewriter evangelists promoting the use of typewriters, we may be partially guilty for encouraging the use of typewriters without adequately explaining that. To use an analogy in the world of automobiles, typewriters are, at least manual typewriters, are very similar to older automobiles, let's say pre-World War II automobiles, where you had a manual choke, you might have had other carburetor adjustments, spark advance, all of that you had to manually set before you could start the engine, and then you had to alter those settings as the engine warms up. Compare that to the kind of automobiles we're used to today, where you get in, push a button on the dash, and you can just drive away, automatic transmission, et cetera, all the comforts that we enjoy today with automobiles. So you might have people getting interested in typewriters that want to be creative with them, but they don't realize that a typewriter is a machine. It is mechanical. And even if you give a person a perfectly serviceable typewriter working just like it came out of the factory, they have to get used to the idea of, oh, there's a ribbon that turns. I have to watch how hard I type, how easy I type. There's a technique to it that directly affects the quality of the imprint, and a technique of typing that will affect how the carriage spaces the characters based on the design of your machine. And all of that is physical, it's mechanical, and it requires you to pay attention to a certain extent to the physicality of how your body interacts with the machine. And a lot of new people to typewriters may not be used to having to do that. They want really the mechanical typewriter equivalent of a laptop computer. In terms of ease of use, I don't have to think about anything but the writing. This is a big hurdle that a lot of creative people have that are new to typewriters. That is, there's a certain minimal level of what I call fiddliness that all mechanical typewriters have, even the ones that are working perfectly. And you have to educate people that these are the certain minimal kinds of things you need to get used to adjusting or checking on your machine as you go through the process of using it. Well, it is for those reasons that I am often recommending to certain newcomers to typewriters to consider an electric typewriter. That is, it has type bars similar to a manual typewriter. It may or may not have a manually operated carriage, but it has a power cord and a motor that operates the machine. And the thing that makes electric typewriters better suited for a lot of new writers and a certain personality of writer that doesn't want to get involved in the mechanics of fiddling with the typewriter to get it to work is that a lot of electric typewriters simply are less fiddly, and they have a broader sweet spot of operational tolerance where the imprint quality and operation of the machine is less dependent upon your fingering technique, for instance. You can use more of a sloppy typing technique, or you might call it a laptop computer typing technique, with an electric typewriter. The downside, or the big caveat to that, is to get that, you have to be willing to put up with a machine that is usually slightly bigger, heavier than its mechanical counterparts. Certainly the typing sound of the type bars hitting the platen is generally a little louder because it's hitting with more authority. But the big caveat is it has a power cord. It has to be tethered to power. And then, of course, when we're talking about electric typewriters, we can't forget the IBM Selectric, the original Selectric and the Selectric 2s and 3s. They are very viable as writers' tools, but keep in mind several big caveats. Number one, the Selectrics are quite large and heavy on your desk, depending on the width of the platen. And secondly, the ribbon materials, the cartridges or ribbons, are one-time use only, and some of them are getting harder to find. And then the other big caveat with Selectrics is they are maintenance intensive. If you don't use them for a long time, all the greases and lubricants harden up into glue, and the machine needs to be professionally serviced. The Selectrics, if you use them a lot, they also wear out. So I think they are maintenance intensive, but when they do work, they're very wonderful machines to use. And then we must not forget also, since we're talking about other than manual typewriters, let's not forget electronic print wheel or Daisywheel typewriters with one-time use film cartridges also. There are a number of those that are still available on the new market. So for instance, with Brother, they quit manufacturing typewriters a few years ago, but there are still machines out there, new old stock being sold new. And also Nakajima still manufactures Daisywheel typewriters. And in the US, there's also Swintech, which I believe the components are manufactured by Nakajima for Swintech. So those are all new typewriters, new Daisywheel electronic typewriters that you can buy. Again, more caveats. Daisywheel typewriters generally have a bigger footprint than a manual or even a standard electric one. They also are relatively loud based on how hard that little solenoid plunger is that pushes the arms of the daisy wheels into the ribbon to make an imprint. They have a power cord. They need to be tethered to power. And also, probably the biggest objection to the electronic daisy wheel typewriters is there is a noticeable delay between pressing a key and when it actually prints. And that varies from brand to brand and model to model. So all of that being said, I'm going to show you a few typewriters from my collection that I think are good writers' typewriters. Huge caveat here, however. If you go and find one of these models out somewhere in the wild, a thrift store, antique store, whatever, there's no guarantee it works the same as mine. And I've even had, well, I have multiple Smith Corona 5 series, and I see differences between one to the other just based on how clean they are and also how well they've been treated throughout their life. So with that being said, let me show you a few typewriters from the different categories of sizes, and this should be a guide for you to hopefully look for something like this that might help you as a writer with a typewriter. Well, when we talk about small or lightweight or ultra-portable typewriters, these are never going to be the ideal writing machine, but if you really think you need a really small typewriter, I'll start with the Royal Mercury. These were made in Japan by Silver Seiko, branded as Royals, and they're really quite good. They were made in the early 1970s, and they feature a number one key, exclamation mark, plus equals, a modern keyboard, at least in the US version. It has a bichrome setting, which is really nice. They do not have tabs, so you'll have to put up with the fact that you're going to have to just space manually to get tabs to happen. And also the simple push and slide margin settings and a deployable paper support. It has a clamshell plastic lid that covers it and is quite easy to carry around. I've always liked the Royal Mercuries. They are very reliable, solid typers and have a good quality type alignment and good imprint. Caveat to them, the platens do get quite hard if you find these out in the wild, and I recommend you have to take the platen out and have it recovered by J.J. Short. And to take the platen out is a little bit of a deal because you'll probably need a couple strap wrenches, one to thread the rubber strap around the platen to grip it, and the other one to grip the left platen knob and unscrew the left platen knob, left hand threaded, in order to remove that so you can pull the center rod out and remove the platen. So it's a little bit fiddly. If you don't want to do that, you'll have to get a repair person, a professional servicer, to pull the platen out for you and get it resurfaced. But I recommend doing that. The rubber does get hard on these. It uses a standard 1/2-inch cloth ribbon, so those are easy to find. So that's my first recommendation for an ultra portable, the Royal Mercury, made by Silver Seiko. Okay, the next ultra portable that I really like, and maybe my favorite ultra portable, is the Olympia Splendids. This happens to be a Splendid 33. There's also a 66 and a 99. These are a little bit more difficult to find in the United States, sold in the US, and so this one right here happens to be a British keyboard version, and really it's very compatible if you're an American typist, but you won't have the $, you'll have the pound symbol instead, and you'll find a few more fraction symbols than you might be used to with a standard American keyboard. I really think these are some of the best quality typing experiences in an ultra portable. I just love the feel of it, and this particular machine makes a really dark imprint. The caveat though with the Splendid lineup is if you get the 33, you won't have a bichrome setting, so you have to use a single color ribbon. And of course, there are no tabs. That's the other caveat. But it does have a paper support finger and the usual margin adjustments, so it's quite easy to operate. I really love the feel of these. It's a little bit more of a firm touch than the Royal Mercury, but it has a more solid feel as well. Just a joyful typing experience for an ultra portable. And it does have a clamshell plastic case that clips over on top of it with a handle similar to the Royal Mercury. And these two machines, the Royal Mercury and the Olympia Splendid lineup, I think are the best of the ultra portables as far as serious writing, in my experience. The medium-sized portable category of typewriters is by far the largest category, has the widest selection of brands and models. And for that reason, it's a little bit more difficult to pick the best writer's typewriter in that lineup. But I would also look at not only the quality of the design and the construction and the reputation, but also how easy it is to find, especially in your country. So here is one of my main recommendations, is one of the 5 Series Smith Coronas. This happens to be a Silent Super. The difference between a Silent Super and the Silent is the Silent Super has the key set tabulator. You can set a tab at any position. The Silent has removable and movable slugs in the back of the tabulator rack. You have maybe 5 slugs you can set, but it's a little less convenient. Both of the machines have, of course, a bichrome setting. They have a carriage release lever on both left and right side of the platen, and they are just wonderful typewriters to use. They have a great touch and feel. They're not too big. They come in a variety of colors, and they're fairly easy to work on if you do want to be a tinkerer. So a 5 Series Smith Corona is one of my main recommendations for a writer's medium-sized portable. Well, certainly one of the more highly sought after and highly regarded medium-sized portable typewriters is the Olympia SM series. This is a late model SM9 from 1978. The SM lineup were very highly regarded, very well built, and these would be a serious typewriter for the contender of maybe one of the best medium-sized portable writing machines. Keeping in mind that the touch on an Olympia SM may be a little bit harder or snappier than what you're used to, and that's true with almost every brand of typewriter. They differ in the way the keys feel. Also know the earlier versions of the SM had carriage shift instead of segment shift, so these are really nice machines. They're highly regarded as great quality typewriters. They may work perfectly for you, or you might find the touch is a little bit hard. But in any regard, they are well considered to be one of the best typewriters. So the other model of medium-sized portable typewriter that I think is a good writer's typewriter are the Hermes 3000 series. This happens to be the earlier body style, the curvy body style. But all three body styles have essentially the same mechanics inside. So you might find the mediums or the later French-made version to be maybe perhaps a little bit less expensive. They all three typed about the same, but they are overpriced on the used market, just know that. And also some people don't like the softer, what they call a mushy touch, but you might actually like that. It depends. So you should try to find one at your local professional typewriter repair shop and try it out for yourself. But I think as far as a medium-sized typewriter that's good for writers, a Hermes 3000 is a good choice if you can find one at the price you're willing to pay for. So no discussion of standard-sized typewriters for writers would be complete without starting with the Underwood 5. This design dates all the way back to maybe the year 1900 approximately. This particular machine is a 1920. I got it from Mr. Ted Monk. It has a fairly recent new platen in it, and I can say, despite its age, this is one of the nicest typing machines in my collection. And these machines here, these standard older machines, are the ones that will probably last the test of time more than any other. Also, your older typewriter repair technicians were probably trained on these. Like I know John Lewis was trained on these and Royals, the big Royals. So anyways, these are wonderful machines. They have that classic old typewriter look, but it just works so well for me. It has tabs. It has a shift lock on the right side instead of the left side. And it has a manual hand crank to operate to manually advance the ribbon if you need to. And you can advance it in either direction. It has tab stops. It has a number like 4 tab stops on the back of the machine. Anyways, these are great typewriters. They are classic. They will last almost forever if you take care of them. They're big. They take up room on your desk, and they don't come with a case, so you can't store them in the closet easily. So you would have one good typewriter like this to be your creative writing typewriter. You couldn't really go wrong with an Underwood 5 or Underwood 6, one of the Underwoods from, let's say, pre-World War II. But of course, you want it to be professionally serviced, new rubber, degreased properly, all in good working order. And the other brand of full-size standard typewriter that I really think is a great writer's typewriter are the full-size Royals. And I think especially the ones that came after the Royal 10. Well, this is a KMM. This is 1947, I believe. That was the first model with the Royal Magic margins. There was a whole number of K-series models in the Royal lineup, and they're all really good. This one types even easier than the Underwood 5, although I like the styling of the Underwood better, but this is a workhorse, serious writer's typewriter that I can touch type on really fast, and these are just wonderful machines. Again, they're standard size, they don't have cases, they're big and heavy, they take up a lot of room on your desk, and you would have one of these and you would enjoy it. But make sure you get it properly serviced by a professional, and it'll last you the rest of your life. Okay, now we get into the category of type bar electrics. These are type bar machines. They have type bars just like a manual, but they're electrified with a motor. This is one of my favorites. This is branded as an Olympia Reporter, but it's actually made in Japan by Nakajima. They come in a plastic shell. They have a very nice plastic form-fitting case that makes it easy to carry these machines. A pretty good lengthy power cord, and this machine works really well. I like the Olympia Reporter, and it was really kind of designed back in the 80s for journalists to use. And so this is one of my recommendations definitely for a type Type Bar Electric, but I have a couple other recommendations as well. Let's look at those. So this is the Royal Saturn. It is made in Japan by Silver Seiko. It's essentially an electric version of the Royal Mercury. And I'm including it in this recommendation as a writer's electric typewriter because it is the quietest electric typewriter I've ever used. Now, you're going to probably have the same issues with the electric version as the manual in that you'll probably find the platen is very hard. That is true with this one. I have not replaced the platen on this machine, or I haven't had the platen resurfaced, so it does tend to be pretty hard on the ribbons. The last ribbon I had in here, it actually punched holes through the black upper half of the ribbon. And so you definitely want to use a backing sheet if you don't have a resurfaced platen. But also you need to know this takes a 9/16 inch wide ribbon, not a 1/2 inch. So you'll have to buy one of those. Probably I recommend from Ribbons Unlimited. It has a bichrome setting, it has tabs, and it's a great quality, very small, and probably one of the lightest and quietest, certainly, electric typewriters around there. It has a clamshell upper lid that fits on it, and the only kind of trickiness to it is you have to kind of route the power cord around the right side of the platen knob, and then there's a little angle part that you kind of have to nestle the wrapped cord into this area in order for the clamshell to fit. A good writer's recommendation here. No discussion of electric type R machines would be complete without recommending the Smith Corona Electric. This was the first portable electric typewriter to hit the market. They are fairly commonplace in the United States, but not nearly as commonplace as the manual cousins to these machines. It has essentially the same footprint as a 5 Series manual. It's a little bit taller, and the holiday case it comes in is also a little bit taller, but it is a wonderful typing typewriter, fairly quiet, and you would be very pleased to have this as your writer's typewriter, provided you can live with the idea of a power cord that needs to be plugged in somewhere. And of course, we have to discuss the IBM Selectric. This is the first model of Selectric, the so-called 72s. This is a 721, meaning the platen is 12 inches wide and it uses the cloth ribbon cartridge system. The first Selectrics were not equipped with lift-off correction, whereas the Selectrics 2s and 3s were. So you have to do manual corrections as you would with a manual machine. But these are great typewriters. You can type exceedingly fast on them. And of course, being able to replace the typewriter elements with a variety of different fonts or typefaces is a real boon. Although if you're first draft typing, it may not matter as much the actual typeface that you're using. Well, finally, we have the category of Daisywheel typewriters. This is a Brother SX 4000. This model isn't made any longer, but it's kind of indicative of the style of late model Brother Daisywheels that are still available on the new old stock market. So this one has a keyboard cover that also doubles as a paper support up on top here, which you can opt not to use if you choose not to. It has a very handy power cord storage compartment in the back, and it uses the standard Daisywheels of Brother, and it uses the one-time use only film ribbon cartridges. Now, I've found there are new Daisywheels available from Raro in Germany, and I bought a 15 character per inch wheel to use with these. They have a little small liquid crystal screen typically, so you can have some primitive editing capability, so you can edit the line before it gets printed. There were also fancier versions of Daisywheel typewriters that had essentially a full-blown word processor in it with a larger display. Whether or not you want to use that is up to you. I prefer treating these more like regular typewriters and not using the editing capability. I think they're good first draft machines. Again, the caveat is you have to replace the ribbon cartridges if you do a lot of writing because they're one-time use only. And the whole thing about the delay between pressing the key and hearing and seeing the character printed on the paper, there's a slight delay that may or may not bother you. If it does, put on some earbuds and listen to music while you're typing. That's my recommendation. Ideally, if you want to be a writer with a typewriter, you want to find a perfectly working typewriter and get used to the mechanics of using it. And where do you find a perfectly good working manual typewriter that you know can work? I recommend finding a professional typewriter repair shop that has a storefront, meaning they have committed themselves to being a business serving the public. And you may not have one in your town or even your state. You might have to go out of state. I'm lucky enough to have John Lewis here in Albuquerque. And you will pay surprisingly a lot of money for a well-serviced, professionally serviced typewriter because the cost of staying open, keeping the business open, and how much an hour of labor costs the technician. So be prepared to spend $300, $400, $500 or more dollars for a well-serviced quality manual typewriter from a professional. And when you do go to the professional shop, make sure you find the machine that really suits you, because some models of typewriter were intrinsically better designed and better suited for long, serious writing than others. And generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, you can say the bigger the machine, the better it is. Small portables like this Royal Mercury is a nice typewriter, but it was never designed to be the kind of typewriter that a big office standard typewriter would be. So consider that in your equation as well. So that's a recommendation of some of the models and brands I think are good for beginners who want to be seriously writing with a typewriter and don't want to be tinkering hobbyists with a house full of half-broken machines. I hope this was useful to you, and as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.